Due to the, I love you too. I appreciate it. Thank you. Due to the virus, I will not be.